Hi everyone, in this video we look at how to simplify using imaginary numbers. So in this example it says to simplify, in A we've got the square root of negative 25. So if I rewrite this as a product of two square roots, well, I can rewrite this as the product of the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 25. So the square root of negative 1 is just I. The square root of 25 is 5. So just recall that we've defined the square root of negative 1 to be this object I. So I can rewrite the square root of negative 25 as 5i. The square root of negative 12 can be rewritten as, I can rewrite this as the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. This is equal to, well, the square root of 4 is just 2, and the square root of 3 I'll leave as root 3 because 3 is a prime number, and when I take the square root of a prime number I get an irrational, so I'll keep this as root 3. The square root of negative 1 is just I. So the square root of negative 12 simplifies to 2 root 3i. So you might be asking yourself, well, here I had the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 25. Why was I able to rewrite this as 5i and not I times I5? Well, the answer is it just looks nicer if you write 5i rather than I times 5. And we can do this because multiplication is commutative. So 5i is the same thing as I times 5. And the same thing here. 2 root 3i is the same thing as I times 2 times root 3, or root 3 times 2 times I. It's just convention that we would write 2 root 3i. Next we've got 3i squared. So let's think about this. Well, remember that we defined I such that I squared is equal to negative 1, and then also the square root of negative 1 is equal to I. So here I've got this square applies to both 3 and I. So I can rewrite this as 3 squared times I squared. 3 squared is 9, and I squared is just negative 1. So this is equal to 9 times negative 1. Well, 9 times negative 1 is just negative 9. In the next example, I've got negative 6i squared. So again, this square, or this exponent, applies to both factors in the bracket. I've got a factor of negative 6 and a factor of I. So this is equal to negative 6 squared times I squared. Now, negative 6 squared is 36, and I squared is just negative 1. So I've got 36 times negative 1. Well, 36 times negative 1 is negative 36. Next I've got 2i times negative 3i. Well, using the associative property and the commutative property, I can rewrite this as negative 3 times 2 times I squared. Or I just rewrote this product. Let me include brackets here. So I have negative 3 times 2, which is negative 6. I squared is just negative 1. So I've got negative 6 times negative 1. I guess it's a little bit redundant if I write a dot there, because I've got the negative 1 in brackets. So I can just write this as negative 6 times negative 1. Now, negative 6 times negative 1 is just positive 6. So 2i times negative 3i simplifies to positive 6. So you can see that using the rules of arithmetic that we already have, we can simplify the imaginary numbers. We'll see you in the next video.